Okay, you're craving English muffins, but it's not worth a trip to the store. We got you covered. All right, these are going to be whole wheat English muffins. So here's the team. I got 2 cups of whole wheat flour. I got a cup of regular flour, but I'm probably not going to use all of it. We'll get to that in the end. We're going to use water in a couple of spots. Obviously, there's some yeast. There's a couple tablespoons of butter we're going to melt. I got a tablespoon of sugar here, plus I'm going to need a little bit more to bloom the yeast. Teaspoon of salt, and a half a cup of milk, and obviously our nonstick spray for our cooktop. So like a lot of bread doughs, there's going to be a wet group and a dry group. We're going to start with that couple tablespoons of melted butter. Follow that up with the half cup of milk, and then there's going to be a teaspoon of salt and a tablespoon of sugar. And then we're going to take that over to the mixer for a quick little get-to-know-each-other party. Time to bloom some yeast. I got about a quarter cup of warm tap water there. I'm going to add just a teaspoon of sugar so that the yeast has something to eat, and then the yeast is going in there. Going to give it a little bit mixy and then let it hang out for about 5 minutes until it's bloomed and ready to add to the rest of the wet group that's already over in the mixer. Yeast has got some bubbles on top. It's ready to go over with the rest of the wet group, and then it'll be time to start adding dry. So truth be told, I'm modifying a traditional white flour recipe here to do this, and boy, this stuff is way stickier. So I go over with my 2 cups of wheat flour, and as I'm adding that in, boy, is it thickening up way more than I expected. I actually added about another quarter cup of water just so I could get some white flour in to this, because I was afraid of doing it 100% wheat. But as I got all the wheat in, I go over and I end up adding maybe 2-3 tablespoons of white. So this ends up looking a lot more like a bread dough than an English muffin, which is a little more ragged, but we're going to give it a go. So cover it with some plastic wrap, and we're going to let it hang out for about a half an hour. We'll see if it rises, and then we'll go on. Didn't get a ton of rise out of this, but we're going to see what we get. So I laid down a little parchment and put some cornmeal on top of it, so I've got a surface that isn't that sticky to work on. Then we're going to transfer our dough onto this, and I want to cut this into an even number of sections, and from the size of it, I think 6 is going to be good. So I'm going to cut this into 6 groups, and then I'm going to shape it into something that looks like English muffins. I was unhappy with the amount of rise. I put these guys on the proof function of my oven, and you see they popped up nicely. So now it's time to go on the cooktop. I've got this thing set at 325, and I've given it a nice spray. And now these are going in. And my old recipe, which is white flour, they're going to get about 10 minutes aside. And we're going to see here that that's too much for these guys, because eventually I come back and the bottoms are just a little bit browner than I would have hoped for. I want some browning, but that's probably a little bit too much. So when I flip these guys, they're only going to get about 5 minutes on the other side. So instead of 10 and 10, this is going to end up being 10 and 5, and it probably would have been better maybe 7 and 6. So they're coming out now, and 5 was good on that other side, and I've got some nice whole wheat English muffins to play with. I actually made these to be the base of a burger, but they're awesome. I've already had one with peanut butter. It's amazing. You don't have to go out and buy English muffins. It's basically a modified bread recipe, which is about as easy as recipes get. And I invite you to try these whole wheat version, especially with whole wheat that you have in your pantry, because it's quite a nutty flavor. It's quite a bit more flavorful than the stuff you would buy at the store.